What's up, everybody? Welcome to Full Contact Poker Podcast number 17. That's more than anybody's ever done. They're the greatest. It'll be the biggest and the best and the largest podcast you've ever watched. Okay, that's all. I'm not going there, I promise. So first thing I want to start with, I guess, is jump right into a wrap-up of the PCA. If you don't know what PCA stands for, that would be the PokerStars Caribbean Adventure. It was for like a year, the PokerStars champion, blah, 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 75 freaking letters. None of them made sense. A little bit of an oopsie there. Good to have the tours back in their original state. EPT is back, LAPT, APPT. Keep it simple, stupid. So I'm glad to see that that's back, and the PCA is the PCA. Because even when it wasn't the PCA, I still was calling it the PCA. Because it's, whatever. You go there. I've been there every single year since the first year, when I came third place to Gus Hansen and Hoyt Corkins on the ship on a boat. So I've been to every single one, and it's always the PCA for me. Talk a little bit about my results. Started off the year with a bang. First event in the 100K. I had a fourth place finish, which is good because I just came off the last 100K I played. And I had a second place finish, losing to Dan O'Brien, winning myself $1 million. I feel like I do a little bit better, especially recently in events that have 3-day structures versus 1 days, because I'm better. I still haven't done enough work on like 30 to 40 big blind play. Most of the work that I did from October, November, December was 100 big blind play, deep stacked. So it really paid off, I think, really well in both of the events that I did well in, because a lot of the things I was doing just seemed like it made it a little difficult on my opponents. They were guessing a lot. They were scratching their head a lot. They were using time banks a lot. So it's always good. Like in the past, I would say that I'm a player against those guys who they would make the decisions a little more quickly because I was very limited in the weapons that I was using. Not that I was capable of, but the ones that I was using. And so I've opened up my arsenal, used a few more to put people in bad spots, and it worked quite well. The fourth place finish was very, 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 very frustrating because I lost 3 big key pots to Justin Bonomo. But despite that, at one point I got down to like 2 bigs, with 4 left, and ran it up to 30 in like 10 minutes. So I'm like, sweet, I'm not finishing 4th, and I finished 4th. Anyway, first hand against Justin was, which one was the first one? The first one was I move all in from the small blind with ace-jack suited. He insta-calls me with ace-9 from the big blind. Both were pretty standard. Flop nothing, turn nothing, 9 on the river. So we doubled him up. Otherwise, it would have been 3-handed, and I would have had a good stack just behind Bryn, and carry cats would be relatively short. And at that stage, it would look very likely that me and Bryn would get heads up. So, Justin doubles up. We play a little longer. I get ace-queen on the button. I essentially move in. Justin calls from the small blind with 6s. Flop comes jack-10, turns a 9, giving me, straight draw, but I brick that as well. So we double him up again. And finally, I got pretty short. Bryn raised from the cutoff. I moved in with kings. Bryn had ace-4. I moved in with kings from the small. Justin goes all in with ace-jack. So there's 2 aces gone. I'm like, this is a good situation. Ace in the flop. Sayonara in 4th place for $521,000. Followed that up with, in the next 3-day event, the 25K, which I've cashed in 4 of the last 5 years. I came 14th, 14th, whiffed the year, then 5th, and then this year, 9th. This one was a little frustrating too because I got my stack up to about $1 million in chips, and lost a key pot to Jared Jaffe, where we both had a flush draw on the turn, but I had a pair, and I had a jack high flush rated, queen high flush draw, and then the river came a club, so I lost a little bit of chips on that one. Then when I got really short at the final table, this one was on Twitter, like people were discussing it, so I figured I'd bring it up because I'm so shocked that people are debating whether or not this was the right play on Jared's part. I don't think there's any real good argument for it in the tournament. Even if a solver says, and a solver is one of them things all the kids is using, even if a solver had said that, this was right, it doesn't take into account ICM, and it doesn't have I'm sure that whoever put it in there didn't put my range in correctly for when I check raise. So, to the hand. The lines are 8 and 16,000. Jared Jaffe raises under the gun, 9-handed. He's got a lot of chips. Folds around to me, and I've got about 12 big blinds total, so I'm like the shortest stack by a long shot. Got 16 in there, he made it 36. I got king 4 hearts. Not a great hand, not a great situation to defend against the under the gun raiser, but it's definitely a call. So I call to see a flop with king 4 hearts. I have limited exposure. I'm not like, it's not like he's gonna be able to bet 3 streets against me. I hit my hand, I'm in. If he's got me beat, say la vie. So the flop comes Jack 3-3 with 2 hearts. I check. He bets 24,000. And I have 160 total. So I just take a goofy line. Like, basically, with my hand, you can just move in. It's fine. But I decided to just, like, take a goofy line and make it 70, which is essentially, I'm committed. I'm putting 70, and I'm not ever folding for 90 more. I don't. Maybe I should. Maybe this is a leak. But I don't have a check-raising range there that folds when I put in half my stack, okay, on that board with 2 hearts, ever. There's just no hand I would ever do that with. So my hand, if you're in Jaffe's seat, you have to think, okay, I have flush draw, I have a jack some of the time, and I have a 3 some of the time, right? So he decides to call, which I was a little surprised about. I thought, you know, if he's going to play the pot, he might as well just put me in. And the turn's a 7 of clubs, blank, and I decide, well, listen, he's not folding, so I don't know. I mean, maybe he could have a worse flush draw. There's not a ton of combos of that. It's like, you know, some queen 10, jack 10, 10, 9. That's about it. Like maybe 3 combos that I'm ahead of that I would give him a free card with, essentially. But I like to say, you know what, I'll check. Maybe he'll check it back. Who knows? Maybe I'll just be able to keep this 90K if I whiff the river. So he checks. I'm like, sweet. All right. So he's just got like, at this point, I figure maybe he does have a flush draw. Or maybe he's just got an ace-king, ace-queen type hand, and he decided to peel because, you know, I could have a flush draw myself, and he just decides not to, you know, charge me on the turn. And the river comes the 4. So I make 4s. I'm like, Jim, I have to be good here, right? Because, like, I feel like most any other hand that beats me, he would have just gone ahead and bet the turn. Now, when I check that turn, my range is even more clear between flush draw or full house. Because now I wouldn't even check a jack. I wouldn't check just the 3, put the flush draw there. I would be jamming all those value hands and only checking full houses and flush draws. So my hand is like so face up in this spot. I bet the river with the 4s, feeling like it's going to be the best hand, and I might get some calls from ace high. Stealth Monk replied saying, you know, I'm probably better off check calling the river, but I actually don't think so because I don't think he's going to bet his ace high that often. I don't think he's going to bluff his ace high. I think he's probably just going to knuckle it and check it back. Versus actually call me. So it's one of those close situations where is he more likely to bluff or is he more likely to call? I decided that I thought he was more likely to call. So I bet and bet. I bet the king 4 hearts and he just turned over 2 kings. So, okay, see ya next turning. A little surprised by that. I did win myself at that final table an Apple Watch Series 3. I already have one, right? But I got another one. Which I haven't figured out what to do with. And at the first final table, I won a PS4. So many of you may be asking, how in the world did you win prizes? Well, this year at the PCA, PokerStars did a lot of fun promotional ideas. One of those being, if you made the final table, you know, depending on what number you drew, you're going to win like a random prize with about approximately a $300 value. So, you know, PS4, there was a drone, there was a selfie stick, which I thought was pretty funny because Ike won a prize and it was a selfie stick. And if you know Ike Haxton, he's not the kind of guy that would need a selfie stick for pretty much anything ever in his life. So he won a selfie stick. And then, you know, he made another final and, you know, it's a random prize and you won another selfie stick. You won 2 selfie sticks. I just thought that was so funny. So yeah, that was like a fun idea. One of the things that was back in full force this year were the gift bags. The player bags were awesome. You know what? Throw me that over there. I'm going to show this one right there. This gift bag. If you're listening to this, you won't see it, but I'll describe it a little bit. So this is the badass player bag for this year. This right here was the iPad like cover detacher thing. You got like a kick-ass bottle of water thingy. Came with some shirts, some hoodies. Oh, I even got my Apple Watch in here. So yeah. Oh, I love the smell of new. So the bags were on point this year. I was really pleasantly surprised to see so many people, qualifiers and others, wearing the gear. I think that's part of what makes an event special, is seeing a lot of people wearing the hoodies, wearing the gear, wearing the brand, wearing PokerStars. So that was a really, you know, smart way to make the players feel a little bit appreciated, to say the least. And what else did we do? We did like raffle ticket giveaways. So for playing an event, if you showed up on time, you get these little tickets. You fill out these tickets. It's a $50,000 free roll, right? $20,000 for first, 10 for second, whatever. Well, these high roller guys, I mean, they're sicko gamblers. So everyone's got these tickets, you know, that are worth, you got to fill them out though. So that's a process. And there's, you know, 5 each time you do it. So the gamblers that they are, they decided to gamble for the tickets. So you had guys, yeah, I saw Stefan Schilhabel had like 150 raffle tickets. And then Ankush had like 100 himself. Everyone was gambling their tickets so that there was one winner. And then Stefan apparently paid somebody to fill them all out because that would have been a process. So he gave somebody a free roll on that. So we had that free roll. in terms of the raffle. We, of course, had a $50,000 free roll at the end of the event, another $50,000 giveaway, just for if you played any event, you could play it. You know, for more $50,000. This is another good thing. We also, of course, gave away platinum passes, which, if you haven't heard about those yet, what rock have you been hiding under? The platinum passes are basically a $25,000 seat into the No Limit Hold'em Players Championship in the Bahamas next year, plus $5,000 in expenses. We're going to be giving away over 300 of those. We gave away, I think, 4 or 5 during this event. One of the winners, I would say that the best player so far to win one would happen to be the silent assassin, David Peters. He won a random draw. Again, there's many different ways that you can win these. The winner of the event, Maria, the winner of the event. I don't want to screw up her name. She won a pass, of course, and there was a few given away throughout the event. One of the other cool stories I thought came out of. Well, you know what? Before I get there, let's play this video of this guy, because this is kind of what I was hoping for with the Platinum Pass idea, is that we'd have a wide spectrum of people that qualified. You'd have some high rollers, you'd have some low rollers. And this guy right here, he basically won a $27 satellite, and his buddies jokingly told him he won the Platinum Pass, and he was really annoyed because he just busted a tournament. And well, whatever. Let's just play the video real quick so you guys have a look. We're looking for Steven, John, Antoine, Josh.
I was lying in my bedroom and watched TV. Then my friend, the Brazilian guy, the funny guy, just gave me a call, and then he said, "Hey man, you won." And I asked him, "What? You won the package?" And then I thought he was kidding on me, and yes, I didn't realize what's going on at this moment. I was sweating and shaking, and it's kind of amazing, and a dream came true. Really, it's sick.
So that's the kind of reaction I love to see. I mean, you could see the guy was pretty much floored that he'd won. Yeah, so the other cool story that came out of Bahamas this year was, I don't know if you know, if you guys have been following a woman by the name of Maria Konnikova. She's a writer who wanted to enter the poker world, you know, a very accomplished writer, enter the poker world and learn how to be a professional, okay? She didn't know the flush beater straight, didn't know anything about poker, right? So she happens to hire a fantastic mentor and teacher in Eric Seidel, who's been around the block a long time and has access to some of the best young minds who apparently helped her along the way. And it was interesting. She seemed to take it quite seriously. She was on the tour, she was traveling, she was really soaking it all in. But it was super special to see at the National Championship, which I think was a $1,500 buy-in to start off the series. She won the damn thing. So she won the National Championship after a year. And I think that's a really good story. She's writing a book about the entire experience. And I think it's a much better story when you have a win at the end of this book for the readers. And, a lot of people are talking about, what does this mean for poker? We had the Chris Moneymaker boom, which you guys are all aware of, where Moneymaker, this accountant just came into the World Series, played aggressive and won the whole thing after winning a $40 PokerStars satellite. Well, this one's a little different, but I definitely think that this book is going to touch a different type of person that could potentially have the Moneymaker boom, but understanding that underlying in that is hard work. Study, playing hard, really learning the nuances of the game and improving your game. She's definitely dedicated. You hear that weird watery thing? What is that? My sink is freaking floating. What's in there? Hang on, go check on the sink there. Sorry, y'all. What is that? Just random? Huh? Whatever. Okay, you're just gonna have to deal with a little bit of tinkly sound. It's not me peeing, it's just the sink. So as I was saying about Maria, yeah, so this is the target audience here, I think she was a very accomplished, intelligent woman. People that have succeeded in other areas, who are well-educated and are willing to put in the hard work. This is an opportunity for them to see that if poker is something that you wanted to do and be sort of self-made, you could, with hard work, make it on the tour, But it definitely, I keep saying hard work because it's super important. You can't skip that part. It's very, very important. the last thing I wanted to touch on in terms of the PCA was the live coverage. Tell me, guys, what'd you think? I thought the live coverage hit a home run. We had live coverage of the super high roller, the main event, the 50K. We had events going through round the clock, essentially. We had great commentators. You had guest commentators. You had Maria Ho, Griffin Benger, Jonathan Little joining, Stapes and Hardigan, and, Lex Valdez did an amazing job as well. I did a little bit of the commentary, but the set was unbelievable. We had some in vision, we call it, like, people on camera that were doing like stuff on the breaks where they were talking like a break desk, like you saw at the World Series when me and Phil Hellmuth did. And I thought the coverage was really, really, really top notch. And I think overall, the player experience, the vibe at the PCA was much improved over last year. There's a lot more giveaways, a lot more happy people. Just the events, the schedule was better. We did go a little cuckoo, or not me, but the schedule makers a year ago went a little cuckoo, having like 100 events, So there was like, 5 different events happening at the same time, and none of them had like good player amounts. So now we scaled back a little bit, and they were much, much better attended. And overall, I would say that it was a big success. And all this leads into next year, where we will have the big one, man. $1 million added to first prize. $8 million more contributed to the prize pool by PokerStars. That's a $9 million investment into this tournament that you're going to have a year to get into, either through winning a Platinum Pass, buying in for $25K, or possibly down the road, there's maybe some possibility of getting satellites running for something like that as well. Get you guys all hyped up for that. I want you to see the sizzle reel, because I love it, man. This is too cool. I love the sizzle reel.
Welcome to a new dawn. This is our time. Welcome to a new dawn. This is our time. Welcome to a new day. We can take on the world. We can take on the world. Welcome to a new day.
That's what I'm talking about, baby! Yes! Come on!
We can take on the world. Welcome to a new dawn. This is our time.
All right, I'm pumped up. You pumped up? Just freaking love that video, man. Listen to the music is just what gets me. Welcome to a new... I'm so goofy. All right, one of the other things I did while I was over in the Bahamas was I played a little bit of online poker. I sat down and played... I really wanted to sort of practice a little bit of the concepts that I've been learning and, at 100 big blinds deep. So I decided to sit down at a 1,500 game on PokerStars, which was empty. The game wasn't running, and I thought, well, maybe if I sit down, who knows? Maybe a couple of the regs might sit with me and give me some action. Yeah, I didn't have to worry about that. So of course, as soon as I sat down, the table filled immediately, like within 3/4 of a second, I would say. And a lot of you might wonder, like, how in the world does that happen? Okay, so for those of you that have never heard of it, there's software called seed scripting, which essentially allows people who have the best software to like instantly sit in a new game when somebody sits down, right? Then they can decide whether or not they want to continue playing or not. So obviously with me, these guys have a big advantage, or at least a perceived big advantage, in that, this is their regular game and I'm not, strong at those because I don't play, So, it's totally understandable that they would want to play with me. Do have a problem with seed scripting as a general rule, but we can get more into that in just a second. The session went really well for me. As I said, I've been learning some things from my coaches that I was doing differently than my opponents. So either they're all wrong or we're wrong, right? And it didn't feel like we were wrong, but again, who knows, right? It was only 2 sessions, about 500 hands total. The first session I won about 30,000, and I came back the next session and I won about 10,000. Now, in both sessions, as soon as I hit the sit out button or like the leave table button, oddly enough, everyone else seemed to have to quit at the exact same time. But what are the odds, right? So clearly they were playing because of me, and they quit instantly once I leave because, you know, I'm the sucker in that game, if you will. So, you know, I tweeted about it sort of in a joking manner because I know this has been in practice for a very, very long time. I know it's very frustrating to a lot of people. And it's something that PokerStars has taken seriously for a very long time in terms of how to address it. Like, how do we fix this bum hunting problem, essentially? And one of the ways that they're doing that is a new system for seating tables. So right now, you can go into the lobby and you can like see what game's going, and you can just be like, oh, 5-10, da-da-da, I'm like, I want to play in that game with that guy, right? That won't be the case anymore. Now, that's not the case if you go to a casino, you go to Bellagio, and you say you want to play 40-80 limit hold'em, you sign up, right? When a seat opens up, you get that seat. You can't table select, you just sign up and you go on the waiting list. So moving to that format will essentially make seat scripting, you know, no longer a viable tool, because you will no longer be able to just automatically sit with a fun player, as we call it. So that's one of the ways I think that we'll do a really good job of curbing it. Now, there's still loopholes to that, right? So what if these guys sit down as soon as they see someone sit, they see who it is, they don't like it, and then they sit out, and then they just leave the table? Well, part of the way the system is going to work is it'll incur penalties for that. So if you do that, you know, the first time, maybe you have a 15-minute wait, you know, you do it again, it's 30, an hour, or whatnot. I don't know exactly what the numbers look like in terms of penalties, but I'm all for them being as drastic as need be. This is something that, well, this is part of a secondary story, which Europe, we have great news. PokerStars was able to create a shared liquidity market between France and Spain so that people from France and Spain can play on bigger events, bigger prize pools. It's a step towards reunifying Europe. You know, obviously we would have liked to get Italy and Portugal as well into that player pool, but, you know, the governments in each country are sometimes more difficult than others to deal with. And I think that's one of the big things that, one of the questions Lance Bradley asked, you know, is like, what are some of the biggest misconceptions about, you know, a online poker business's goal and what the perceived goals are and things like that. And one of them is obviously being, for PokerStars, I know it's super important to be regulated in every possible market. And a lot of time, energy, and money is spent trying to make sure that that happens. We're a public company, so it's super important to be like on the level in as many markets as possible. The more stability you have, the more longevity you have as a company. You never know when you're in an unregulated market when things like Australia will happen. You know, Australia decided to like end online poker, which is a big hit to online poker. We had our Black Friday in the United States of America, which, you know, nobody saw coming, and that also had a huge dent. So the more countries you can work with the governments and regulate, the more stable the whole industry can be as a whole. So I'm happy that PokerStars leads the way in that area because it's super important. And I think they've done a really good job. Also in America, you know, a lot of people ask, like, when is poker coming back? Good news in Pennsylvania looks like. Possibly, you know, that will bring New York and whatnot. California is a tough one. Not for the reasons a lot of people think. California has a lot of different reasons why it's a tough sell. But I think if something like sports betting or, you know, sports betting specifically, if that were to enter that market, I think that would allow poker to kind of piggyback it a little bit. So we would have an opportunity there. But back to the whole seat me thing. So I was on Twitter talking to Joey Ingram a little bit, and he kind of like, he's a very passionate young guy, right? He certainly wears his emotions on his sleeves. And sometimes, like, you know, he sees something wrong. He's like, come on, man, we gotta fix it, bro. Like, I got ideas, man. Just do it. I gotta fix. Come on. What? Shit. He just watches like, shrug? We don't shrug. And I'm like, so I'm listening to this stuff and watching, like, trying to make out what the hell he's saying, right? Because for all the passion that he has, he can become sometimes a little bit, you know, his points kind of get lost in the chaos a little bit. So I tried to hear him out in terms of, like, you know, his ideas and things like that. And I feel like we got to a place of, well, I guess a misunderstanding of where I was standing from. Like, because one of the tweets I said was to the effect of, you'll never stop people, you'll never be able to force people to play in games that are negative EV. Now that's just a logical, obvious statement. Now, having said that, there's a lot of things you can do to entice people to believe that, or to actually give them situations where they do have plus EV. But if somebody ultimately deems that, like, you know what, I can't beat this game, you can't really like create scenarios where you force them to continue to play. So, for example, if you got a six-handed game and there's two bad players in the game, and you feel like you're worse than the other three, but you're better than the other two, and you're like, okay, I can still play. Well, now those two people quit, right? I mean, you can't. That player has every right to say, listen, I'm not going to lose my money to these three, sharks over here. I'm going to quit as well. That's just part of poker. Game selection, the ability, especially cash games, the ability to like sit down whenever you choose. Now, it's a totally separate issue from bum hunting itself with seed scripting software and just kind of the culture that's created online. Like when you play live, if you did that in a live scenario, it's a little more in your face. So for example, let's say there was a fun player. He gets up and it's a 9-handed game and all 8 people go, okay, we're done. You're basically telling the guys like, you, sir, are the sucker. It happens a little less often in live, but online, there is no emotional connection. There's no, there's no social skills required. It's just whatever. I'm doing what's maximum EV. Like I'm not even playing another hand, let alone another round to make this guy feel good or whatever. And I remember the emotion or feeling of like, if I had low self-esteem or not thick skin, I would be like, man, they're just hounding me like I'm the sucker. And then as soon as I quit, they quit me. If I was a fun player, that type of environment wouldn't be something that I would want to come back to. Now, there's a lot of different things you can do to eliminate seed scripting, and I think the seed me option is one. I personally, if it was up to me, I would just put a ban on it, and I agree with Joey wholeheartedly on this, that I would just say ban them entirely, and if you find people are using them, you can, temporary ban their accounts, fully ban their accounts, and the issue from the other side is like, how do we catch them effectively? And it doesn't take long. Just the threat of it will alleviate the situation. So, for example, I sat down, I know all those guys had a seed script. I know all their names. I can send that directly to PokerStars Support and be like, these guys are using seed scripts. They could look into it and they could address it that way. The good news is there is going to be a system in place, the seed me system, that should work. And we're trying it in the shared liquidity market in Europe with France and Spain, and it's been tested in other markets as well. As I said, I personally wish, or it was just as easy as banning them all. For some reason, we've had roadblocks there in terms of like how we can make that happen, which is unfortunate. But this is not an issue that PokerStars just shrugs and goes, meh, I don't care. It's something that's been talked about for 5-6 years. Like, how do we solve this issue? And I think we have a solution that should suffice. And if not, then we'll have to push for something even more, drastic in the future. One of the other things that seriously, it's like, so we had some rate changes, of course, as you know, and one of the things that I don't think was right, and I still don't, is that now in the high stakes cash games, you don't take part in the bonus reward system at all. And I feel like, you know what, they're generating rake. Smaller limit players are generating rake. Why shouldn't they take part in the reward system? Didn't make sense to me. They decided to, cut that along with many other things. And the funny thing was, is I would have expected to see like a major dip in the amount of play. But that's not what we've seen actually happen. It hasn't had an effect because, frankly, like reg-on-reg battles, even before that, just weren't really happening. Like at the highest stakes, we're not seeing, or just haven't for a long time, regs battling regs. It's always been based off of a fun player, people who get seed scripts to sit with them and, take advantage of their weak play. But that was to be expected, and I'm actually surprised, frankly, that high-stakes online poker has lasted as long as it has. It was destined, no matter what. I mean, okay, this is maybe a controversial opinion, but I believe it wholeheartedly, and I just don't see sensible arguments against. Like, you take something like high-stakes gambling online, right? You take all these geniuses who have software that, from solvers, which are not legal, to HUDs, which, Olivier Bousquet makes a good point that they shouldn't be legal. That's another tricky one. How do you ban HUDs? How do you ban something that people can write on a pen and paper? And then aren't you, if you're doing that, aren't you just rewarding the cheaters who will just do it anyway? So, what was my train of thought there with that? Boom, break shot. So anyway, my point was, high stakes online poker was not, or never would be, something that I would think has an opportunity for expanded growth, right? Because in order for these games to run, you need players willing to just go in there and get crushed. And there are less of those people. There are less of those people. He did mention Poker After Dark is, one of the ways like people they're having trouble filling seats after just a year in terms of bringing fun players into those. It's not quite as easy to convince, recreational players like, hey, I got this game for you. You're going to get your ass kicked. You're going to lose really bad, but go have fun. It's not as fun to lose all the time. So part of what a lot of those players were drawn to or have become drawn to are different formats. One being, and I don't like this format personally, I don't know, it's kind of goofy, but they're so popular. KO poker, right? So KO poker is like a bounty. You bust a player, you get some cash. These are super popular. People love them. Spin and goes, something that people are, find very, very, very popular. I think part of the reason for that is they have winning moments, right? You're only three-handed in a spin and go. You're going to win those a lot, a decent amount of the time. Even if you're bad, you're still going to win like 1 out of 5 or 6. Now, bounty tournaments, you're going to get back money. You're going to win something. You're going to knock a guy out and you're going to get something back. My fear, or just like the reality of cash, is that these same players walk into that sort of trap and they're lamb to the slaughter. Like, I don't think if they play like a 3-4 hour session, they're going to have any winning sessions, especially at the high stakes. It's far too tough. The difference between what's available now to the average recreational player who just puts $500 on the site to what was available in 2004 are drastically different. In 2004, this average Joe, he can sit down with his $500. He might not win. He's probably not going to win, but he'll last a while, play a month on it, maybe 2. Today, he takes that same $500, sits down at 1-2, plays 3 or 4 sessions. There's nothing left. Like, he's not winning. The players have gotten so much better, right? Which has also had an effect on the return rate of weaker players who no longer feel like they can win. So they draw into other formats. And that's just the way poker has always evolved to. In the old days, 5-card stud was the game. That died out, 7-card stud came along. Then Hold'em came along, and all the stud players were annoyed because there was no more stud games, and their stud games drew out. So then Limit Hold'em was the game, and then Limit Hold'em morphed into No Limit Hold'em, and things always change. And the masses ultimately dictate what they want to play. So we offer at the site all kinds of things. We don't force people into one or the other. They're all available to you to play whatever you want. People are going to gravitate towards things they enjoy playing. So as a company, it just makes sense, right, to offer people more of what they want, right? Because I get it from a selfish perspective or a personal perspective. You think, okay, what's in it for me? Like, if I'm a live cash game player, how is recreational players playing spin and goes good for me, right? The company as a whole is trying to bring in as many new people to the game and keep them there, right? Hopefully some of them playing your games, and if not, that's not exactly the goal of the business, right? To make sure that your games are like juicy enough so that you can live and like pay, like have a good bankroll, or just like you can make a lot of money from it necessarily. That's like not, it's obviously always been a partnership in that you have the company who takes a rake, and then you have the winning players who take so there's, like I was saying, 3 parts to an ecosystem, right? You have the rake, which takes money out, right? That's not good for the ecosystem. You have the winning players, they take money out. That's not good for the ecosystem either. You have the losing players, who are the most important and integral part of the ecosystem. So these 2 aspects, the rake and the pro players, are what actually ultimately destroy an ecosystem, because the new money gets eaten up so much faster. When the rake gets increased, absolutely, that's the case. And also, when the win rate of the winning players increases as much as it has in the last 5-6 years with just the evolution of the game and the skill level at the high stakes. So I guess that's my end of my rant on all that. As much as I'd love to believe that there's these like solves and saves for the high stakes poker online generation, I don't see 5 years from now a viability for nosebleeds to be a case, unless everyone in poker is so Bitcoin crypto freaking rich that they're like, I don't care who I'm playing with, gamble. But the reality of the situation is now, in order for those games to run, you need to have fun players willing to play them, and they're few and far between. And there's less of them now than there was in 2004. All right, one more thing I wanted to bring up. Going back to the PCA, just the main event. This isn't about the PCA, but it's about a tweet I saw from Stefan Sonheimer, one of the great young German players today. He was watching the final because his buddy Corey Aldemir was down to three-handed, along with Bucky and the eventual winner Maria. And, you know, he commented on the fact that they were playing like less than 15 hands a level, like 15 hands an hour. And that's just not good, right? Part of the reason for that, or a big part of it, was Maria was very deliberate in her decisions. She was a short stack, and she was taking, even like in what you could consider like very obvious mundane situations, like I have 9 big blinds on the button, I have king, queen, okay, I'm all in. She was still taking, you know, upwards of 30 seconds to make that decision, which ultimately has an effect on the structure because now you're just not getting that many hands in. So he had an idea, which I think is really interesting, and I think it's worth taking a look at. Instead of at the final table, not for the whole tournament, instead of at the final table just like having level based on the, you know, on time, do it based on number of hands. So 1 hour level, 25 hands. When you've played 25 hands, that's a level, you move up to the next level, right? This guarantees or de-incentivizes stalling, because what we see now, if you're a short stack, and there's two reasons why you might do that. If you're a short stack, or if you feel like your opponents are better than you, you are absolutely incentivized to stall as long as possible. The longer you stall, the faster the blinds go up, the more of a luck-based game it becomes, right? The deeper stack you're playing, the more you're going to get outplayed, or the more your short stack becomes at a disadvantage because you're forced to wait for really good hands. If you essentially put everyone, all 3 of them, in a situation where everybody's short stacked, it becomes a much more level playing field. And I don't think it's ever a good idea to incentivize, you know, tanking. And that's the case. Like if people are thinking about what's in my best financial interest, my best financial interest is to tank. So we can't stop people from doing what's financially sound for them. We have to address that a different way with the rules in a much more formal way. So I like this idea. You could do this in addition to a shot clock, which I think would be beneficial. I really like to see, and I'm so happy to see all the high rollers. Shot clocks are the norm. That's just the way it's going to be going forward. You're going to see very few events without a shot clock. And I'd like to see that be implemented in the main event, in the Players' Championship, in a lot of different events. But I definitely thought Stefan's idea was interesting. You know, Patrick Leonard on Twitter said, well, you can't really do that because, you know, what if older guys need to use the bathroom and then the level takes too long and, you know, you don't get a break? Well, there's a solve for that. You could just set scheduled breaks at certain times. So you could still maintain, for example, every 2 hours, regardless of where you are on the level, you take a break. And it also isn't something that, as I said, we're talking about doing it 2-3 tables, because obviously there would be another issue of having to wait for other tables to finish. This is a situation where it's just the final table. It's self-contained. You can implement breaks. And I really like this idea, and I think this might be a really good idea for the No Limit Players Championship. And one of the other things I want to touch on with that is the Players Championship is going to be designed by players, right? So, well, the plan is to take in as much feedback from you guys in terms of what do you want to see? Do you want a shot clock? Do you not want a shot clock? Do you want 8-handed? Do you want 6-handed? Do you want how many time extensions? Do you want dinner breaks? Do you want you know, you name it. Like, we're going to try to create this thing in such a way that the players themselves build it and you know, are really essentially at the core of like what it's all about. All right. One more. I've been on the Twitter beefs with lots of people lately. One guy is a blast from the past. I don't know if you remember this name, but his name was Steve Badger, and he's got the most, like, it's the he's got the perfect last name because he badgers you for, like, I remember from way back when, he badgers you. He doesn't, like, you know, forget about conceding an argument. He never concedes a point of your argument. You could make like 20 arguments. He wouldn't concede any one of the 20. It's all just rah, rah, rah. And it's like a reminder of the old days. But anyway, we got into a discussion about the big blind ante format. Now, for those of you that don't know, the high rollers for, about a year now have been, instead of having everyone, let's say, for example, at 400 and 800 blinds, there's typically a $100 ante, right? Instead of having everyone individually ante 100, what we're doing is we're having the big blind ante, the size of the big blind, for the entire table. So he would put in 8,000 for the big blind, 8,000 in antes, and then he wouldn't have to pay an ante until his next big blind. So that's worked amazingly well. Everywhere it's been tried and implemented, it has been a smash success. I know that some tours do it slightly different where they do it on the button. I personally think that's fine, but I think it's better because there's always a big blind to do it in the big blind. There's also, you know, one less person that has to put chips in versus, so you got 2 versus 3 now. And it works, and the players love it, and it's a very clean system. There is one small situation that could come up less than 1/10%. That is essentially where the crux of this entire argument went. What we do, what the high rollers have done, all these people who, and I didn't create this system. At first I was a little resistant to it myself. I'm like, this seems a little goofy. But I trusted people that were much smarter than me and that are really like understand the game at a very high level. And they came up with the system, I went with it. They also came up with a way to deal with what happens if the big blind is all in, right? So what happens if you owe 8,000 for the big blind and 8,000 for the ante, but you only have 6,000? Where does it go, right? Would you put it in the ante? Do you put it in the big blind? Well, what we realized was the best approach was to put the 6,000 in the big blind, right? And then there'll be no ante this hand because he can't afford to, he doesn't have the money to pay it. So now that 6,000, he'll win if he wins the pot, however number of people played for the 6,000. So if it's three-handed, he can triple up to 18K, right? Or 1,800, whatever it was. Now, Justin Hammer and Steve Badger went off about this idea to change it from what it's already been for the last year and a half that hasn't caused a single issue imaginable because there really is nothing to it. It's not even a very important situation. They want to change it so that instead of the big blind anteing first, the money would go towards the ante first. Now here is the big problem with that. So remember the scenario I said earlier where you owe 8,000 big blind and 8,000 ante? If you only have 6,000, right, and you put that in the ante, what exactly are you playing for? Huh? So now you're playing that next hand to break even. So you have to win a pot to stay alive, to break even, to put that 6,000 all in on the small blind the very next hand, right? That seems kind of cold-blooded, right? Part of what this system already creates, first and foremost, is short stacks in early position suffer with this slight change a little bit because they're under more pressure to play hands and they have to be much more gamble heavy than they would be normally when it's everyone ante for themselves. Having to pay 2 big blinds versus 1 big blind, 1 small ante is a much bigger percentage of, say, for example, a 10 big blind stack. So they already take a little bit of heat there. So giving them a little bit of a sort of like a better option than the other one in the big blind doesn't piss anybody off, right? Like, the guy's already dead. If a guy's in a tournament and he doesn't even have frickin' enough to put in a big blind, he's already pretty much screwed. You really want to dig it into his face and be like, "Rrr." Imagine a guy who's got like, half a big blind and he's like in the cutoff and his table breaks and now he's gone right to the big blind and you're like, okay, buddy, we're going to stick it to you. You got to win this pot to break even and then you got to win the next pot to win anything. Fuck you. Like this. Why? What the fuck, man? Relax. This is so insane. It's like such a small thing, but it's definitely much more player friendly to do it as I said. Now, the key thing about the ante being in there is like if you're on the button and you only have 2,000 in chips, right? And there's 16,000 in antes out there, you're eligible to win the whole thing because you pay for your antes in the big blind for the entire round, right? So the argument is, well, how do you collect on antes when you didn't really pay for them? It's not like they did it by choice, bro. It's not like they go, oh yeah, oh antes this time? Shit. I ain't paying, man. Nope. I ain't paying. I'm paying the big blind. I ain't paying shit for the antes. That's not what happens, right? They're not choosing not to pay the ante. It's not like they're skipping the ante. They're just playing the stack that they have. That's all they got left. So I don't feel like it's worthwhile to go the extra mile to really punish a short stack even further, aside from the fact that they're already at a disadvantage from the early stage, from under the gun stages, to also now force them to win 2 hands in a row to stay alive. That's pretty extreme. And the other option, as I said, so if you put in 6 in the big blind instead of the 8 and 8, now if 4 people call, or if there's 3-4 people in there, you have 18K. Okay? Now in the small blind, you got to put in 4. You could still play an entire round with that. You're not forced to play both hands. With the system that they want to do, or like they do with their tournaments, which is just stupid and wrong, they basically force that short stack in most situations to have to win 2 pots in a row. And I mean, like, it just feels really greasy to play a pot, you win the pot, and you broke even. You know, just kind of stupid. So anyway, it's such a non-big deal, but it's one of those same spots where it frustrates me when you have a group of like players who play this game for a living, who created rules that makes the most sense, they play it, they understand it better, and then you have people come in and want to fiddle with it and mess with something that ain't broken to try to like put their fingerprint on it. It doesn't need to be changed. It works. You're always best off, almost to a T when it comes to poker-related issues, listening to what the majority of players think makes the most sense, rather than over-policing a situation that you don't need to get all involved in. And again, as I said, just think about the feeling of a guy you moved from a table who was in the cutoff, who had like half a big, and now you put him in the big blind and you tell him, hey bud, yeah, you got to play this spot to break even, and then you got to win the next spot to stay alive, when he had like 8 hands left to play. Really feels greasy. You don't want to do that. You don't want your players leaving like feeling that kind of experience. So, you know, the other way, the way we do it now is like, sure, you know, he has a chance now to get full value for the 6K and not have to ante. Oh, it's not the end. It's not like some, wow, this guy's going to win the tournament now. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, enough of that stupid topic. I can't believe I spent this much time on it. I'm over-arguing with them. They can argue with all the other intelligent people that came up with it, because it did. I tried to explain this to them. It didn't work. So next. Next up for me. Might as well go there. Next up for me, as many of you know, I play soccer. On November 27th, I believe it was, I had a weird play where I went into the corner, and a guy, his weight hit the back of my knee. I hobbled off, walked it off, came back in the game, played the last 10 minutes. Didn't think much of it. I'm like, oh, that kind of hurt. Went home, felt okay. Woke up in the morning, couldn't move my leg. So I was, you know, wow, that sucks. I was like, okay, this is going to have to heal. And after a week, it started to get a little bit better. Second week, a little bit better. About a month, a little bit better, but not healed. And I was like, oh, this could be a problem. So I went to the doctor, and he tested the knee, and he said, you know, seems like it's just cartilage damage. It does, because everything he did, it didn't seem like it was all that bad. I was like, oh, that's good news. I mean, cartilage damage will just heal on its own. But he's like, we're going to do the MRI anyway. Do the MRI a couple days later, and nope, complete ACL tear. Who knew, right? So I have a complete ACL tear, and I had a really difficult, stressful decision as to when I wanted to do the surgery. I was in Bahamas just now. I could have done it right now, but then there's the US Poker Open, which is an event that's going to be happening at the Aria from February 1st to 11th. And I didn't think if I did the surgery now, I would be up in 10 days to like sit at a poker table with like a lot of pain in my leg. So I decided then that, well, this is the other, then the last 2 weeks of the month, there's like 8 home games for the Golden Knights. And I'm like, I don't want to miss those. And I know that I don't want to hobble around at the arena, like, you know, getting all the way down to the 10th row. So I decided March 1st is the date. I will be taking all of March off. I'm not going to be playing any poker really. I'll just be working on massive rehab. I'm doing everything pre and post that I can do to make it work. Richard Seymour, who you guys know is the NFL star, one of the most amazingly humble, good person I've met in a long time. Like, I don't really bring a lot of new people in to all that often, but what a great guy. Like, I remember when my dog passed, he was the one that was like there for me, and he barely knew me, you know? So anyway, he gave me some advice about my ACL, and he said, dude, because I haven't been doing leg workouts, I'm still working out, you know, the other stuff, but he said, you got to make sure that you strengthen your quads and your calves as much as possible, and it'll help with recovery. So I'll be doing that. I'm going to do everything it takes to kick this butt. I'm like kind of anxious to get started. I'm not anxious. I'm not like looking forward to the pain that it's going to cause, but I'm excited to just be through it. And I figure by April 10th, when, you know, the 11th, when the Golden Knights will be hosting a playoff game, I will be ready and feeling good about going to those games. Speaking of the Vegas Golden Knights, some of you asked for a little bit of hockey talk, so I'll give you like a couple minutes. I've been doing a lot of different types of hockey media. I was recently on the NHL Network, and I've also done plenty of podcasts, both locally and on Sirius Radio and different things like that. I've also done the post game for the Golden Knights games. Often when, you know, we leave the games at the beer house there, the guys get together and they ask me to sit in for a few minutes. So I really enjoy that. I'm like a hockey nerd. Excuse me a moment. I'm a massive hockey nerd, like more than you could imagine. I'd say I spend at least 4 to 6 hours every day studying the game, studying what's happening in the league, looking at numbers, crunching numbers. So many cool numbers you can look at, and analytics in hockey's really taken off the last, say, 3-4 years. And you know, part of like what I wanted to do was like really break down, because a lot of people are like, how are the Golden Knights good? And I'm so sick of the freaking stupid arguments about how the rules like made them good, and it's like bullshit, and they're not really an expansion team, and they were like the best team in the league. I'm like, every pundit had them finishing dead last in the league. Every single pundit. They also had Pittsburgh winning the division. I thought they were stupid because that's not going to happen. But every pundit had them finishing last, and the truth is, we didn't even draft. We didn't put together in the expansion team a group of the best players. A lot of the players were chosen based on future possibilities. A lot of our best players we traded. We traded Mark Mathot right away. It wasn't designed to win now. What ended up happening, though, was we drafted a bunch of young, speedy guys with, some skill and some upside, and we put them in a system that Gerard Gallant created that is revolutionary for the game of hockey. He basically has them playing, if you guys are basketball fans and not hockey fans, he has them playing essentially like a full court press for the whole 60 minutes, and they're a fast break team with not many, no holding the ball. It's no touches. It's tip passes, boom, boom, boom. The speed in which our transition game happens is unlike any other team. Steven Stamkos of the Tampa Bay Lightning came to Las Vegas and said, we can learn a lot from them. Instead of most teams, when they have a turnover, they grab it, they look around, they see what's there, and then they start to move forward. Golden Knights, what they do, when that puck's on the stick and it's a takeaway, it's instantly moved up the ice as fast as possible. It is not a coincidence that the Golden Knights, based on their forecheck, are #1 in the entire league in terms of the number of giveaways they've forced, number of takeaways total. They're by far the top team in that regard. Their shooting percentage overall is top 5, and part of the reason for that is people say, well, they don't have the Crosby, Malkin, Kessels on the line, but part of the reason the shooting percentage is so high is because of the high quality shots and the odd man rushes that are happening in transition a great deal. So I take my poker knowledge and my understanding of the game to hockey, and I look at it, I break it down very similarly in terms of figuring out what is the secret, what are they doing differently, where is the math behind why this makes sense. And for the naysayers out there, that don't understand it, you got to watch some of the games and then take a look deeper into some of the numbers. We're also bottom of the league in terms of number of hits. We're not really like a hitting team, but we're also by also within that, we're like the second least penalized team in the league. So we don't spend a lot of time on the penalty kill. We spend a lot more time on the power play because we draw a lot of penalties, but we don't take a lot of dumb penalties. And a lot of that has to be a testament to the coaching. Another big thing that is important with this team, super important, is the consistency through all 4 lines. We have 4 lines that we roll. There is no one player that's bigger than the team. You take out any one player, you take out the star player from virtually any team, they're done. You take out Crosby, where's Pittsburgh going? You take out McDavid, Edmonton's finished. Well, they're finished anyway. But on this team, there isn't one single player that you take out that cannot be replaced and somebody inserted into the system. That bodes well for a playoff run. Because they run 4 lines, the time on ice between the bottom 3 or even the bottom pairing defenseman and the top, very, very close, especially compared to other teams in the league. So everyone's getting a chance to play. We've got farm hands. We've got more NHL-ready players than any other team in the league. So don't expect this team to just be an easy feat in the playoffs, right? They remind me of essentially what they've done of Gus Hansen in the early era when he started to do really well in tournaments. Gus Hansen played a style that people weren't just ready for. He was super aggressive, forecheck, but careful. And I feel like people are going, and a lot of people copied Gus Hansen's approach. And I feel like that's going to happen in hockey with the Golden Knights. A lot of people are going to look at what they've done and go, how did they do this? They're essentially like the Moneyball team, a group of underpaid, underappreciated, underutilized players from their previous teams put together, given a chance with the players coach and Gerard Gallant, who understands that these guys' egos are probably a little bit bruised because they were all let go from their previous teams. So he's not going to rah them into the ground like John Tortorella would. He's going to comfort them, give them a chance to thrive, and they buy into it. They like each other. They like the coach. That's the end of my hockey rant. I think I got that in 5 minutes, right? I was trying to talk fast. Need some water. The last thing I wanted to talk about that I feel like I'm more knowledgeable about than anyone in the world, I think that's quite clear. And there's a lot of talk about this in the poker world of late, and it's the topic of cryptocurrency. So cryptocurrency is something that I know all about blocker chains. There's nobody who knows more about blocker chains and Crisco than me. I'm just a guru with it. I buy Bitcoin, I bought Ibernets and Ubernets and PSPnets, and I got it all. And I got it all at the low, and I'm selling to the high, and I'm doing the thing, and I buy. So here's my advice, because I'm obviously the utmost authority on this stuff, on crypto, okay? Obviously, I'm full of shit. I know dick all about crypto. I will say this, I unfollowed a bunch of people. Don't take it personal. But, when I'm on Twitter, obviously I like to talk a little bit about hockey, poker, some politics occasionally. Don't shoot. But one thing that I find, and I get why people are interested in crypto, because it's a about money, but I don't give a shit about money really all that much, and I don't like talking about it. It's one of my least favorite subjects. Like if we would go to a dinner party, people are like, whoa, what is the market looking like today? I'm like, oh, look, I bought this and I bought that. I'm like, I don't give a shit. I have a friend, Eric Wasserson, you guys know, Popcorn. He's always like, whoa, dude, this is a big thing, money, man. I'm like, I don't care at all. Like it's just not my thing. So it's certainly taken the poker world by storm. I am invested as well. But I trust in people that know a hell of a lot more than I do, because I don't know nothing. I don't want to know nothing. I'm not interested in the space. But it's certainly an area where a lot of people... if I had any advice, again, I'm no guru, but I would say this is probably true investing in almost anything, is invest an amount of money if you choose to, that if you lost it tomorrow, all of it, doesn't change your life. Like, you're still fine. Like, I think it's a little bit dangerous to be investing like 70, 80% of your net worth in something that has the volatility that crypto does. And again, I don't know what I'm talking about, right? I'm not an authority on this. I am an authority on hockey, okay? But I'm not an authority on crypto. So anyway, if you are thinking about getting into it, I would say make sure that you look at this as similar to what you would do if you were a recreational poker player and you just played poker for fun and you went and sat down at a table with $500 and you're like, hey, if I lose it, I lose it. If I win some, I win some. Take that approach in such a way that doesn't affect your life too drastically. Have fun with it, you know. And if you enjoy that sort of talk, I'm sure there's plenty of people to follow that can update you on that. I will not be one of them because, as I said, I'm clueless, man. I got stories about Bitcoin that I was going to buy a bunch when it was like $700, but I didn't really know how to do it, because it's so complicated and weird. So we waited. I was like, I don't know, figure this thingy, the tracer, the mazer, the blah, 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 blah. So I waited until it got up to like 16,000. It was 700. I was planning on buying it, you know. Stupid. But whatever. It's only money. It grows on trees, you know. So I think that's going to wrap it up, guys. I don't know. How long do we go? What does that thing say?
55.
Perfect. Man, it's like I got a freaking 1 hour brain clock in here, right? So we're almost at about an hour. Thanks to everybody who gave me suggestions on what you wanted to talk about. I got to most of them, I think. Some of them were really stupid, so I just left those ones alone. But other than that, I will be here in Vegas, just working out, taking care of my knee, getting ready for the U.S. Poker Open. I'm going to do some study. Oh, you know what? Close with that. A lot of people asked, how am I studying? What am I doing? Typically, during that 3-month plan, I had my two coaches, come to the house, and we spent a good 4 to 6 hours. Sometimes we'd spend 4 hours breaking down one hand. And essentially what we're working on is breaking down the hand a little bit differently than I have in the past. Coming to the same conclusions ultimately and incorporating all of my best skills in terms of whatever live reads I may pick up, or instinct or feel or whatever, like incorporating all that into what's like a hybrid of poker, which is what they describe their site as. It's like a hybrid of game theory, GTO, and exploitative. So teaching me the baselines of how to start to break down a simple hand and be like, okay, what should you do here with this part of your range? What should you do here with this part of your range? So essentially working backwards. And the way that I've always looked at a poker hand is like, well, I've got 9s. What does he got? Right? So instead of thinking specifically only about like the hand that I have, thinking about, okay, so from, you know, like what is the range of hands that they have? You know, what does my range typically look like in this situation? You know, what is the bet size? How often should I call a bet that big, for example, you know, with this part of my range? You know, stuff that's a little bit more complex than I used to. And we're also, you know, they've got some data points that I think are pretty advanced and pretty strong. And I feel like from a bet sizing perspective, that's one of the biggest changes I think people have seen in my game. Some of you may have seen the bluff that I ran against Ivan Luka. And I'll just go over that one really, really quickly. Ivan Luka min-raised like 28K-ish, and I called with deuces in position. It came 3-5-6. He bet 30K, I believe. Or no, he made 30 pre-flop and 28 on the flop. On that flop, I decided to raise to 95,000. I think that's a fine raise. I think in this kind of situation, it's very rare that the initial raiser is ever going to have a 3-betting range at all. So you have these deuces which have, even if he has aces or kings, you have 6 outs to beat that with a deuce or the gut shot. And he has to be wary of you raising him on that board, because you'll do that with sets as well, right? You can do that with a lot of pretty strong hands. So I raise him here for a couple reasons. One, to take control of the hand and maybe give myself a free card to hit the outs on the turn in the river. in a very low risk situation because he's not 3-betting very often, as I said, especially because we were very, very deep stacked at this point. And on top of that, I'm also denying equity. If he does have a hand like Queen Jack, right, and I just flat, which is a fine play, well now, I just give him 6 free outs that he would fold to my raise on the flop. So he calls my 95K raise. Now I'm like, okay, so he's probably got a pair. I'm dead. Dead. Turn is a 3. He checks, and I'm like, I'm done with this hand. I'm not going to bluff anymore. He's got a big overpair. I'm not going to do anything. But then the river card is an 8. So the 8 is a really good card for the range of hands that I could have. So if I was making a semi-bluff with 7-9 suited, well, I've just made a straight. I could have possibly raised some of the time with pocket 8s on the flop. So see where I'm at. And, got there with the 8s full. There's also slow played full houses where I did raise the flop and check back the turn. I could have quads. I could have a full house. His range is pretty much capped. Like he's not going to, well, actually that's not necessarily true. He could still have some full houses. He could definitely call flop, check turn, and check raise river. That's possible. So we won't rule that out. But overall, I have a bigger, I'm going to have more hands that are nutted or very, very strong in this situation than he's going to. So now that I know he has an overpair, and in the past, this is a spot where I just check and give up, because small ball poker, and there's no point in, bluffing because they'll give you their chips in other ways, and they just don't do that as much anymore. So I've had to add a lot more, intricate bluffs. The question is, what kind of a bluff? Like how much, right? So I decided with, what was there, like 200K out there? It was like 250 or something. I decided for me to get him off an overpair, I'm going to have to size up. Now, I feel like I can do this credibly in this situation because I also have enough value hands in the range that I could have here that would also size up. So if I did have a full house, I may choose 400K as a sizing a decent amount of the time. So because I don't have a ton of bluffs really here, there's a lot. I feel like, anyway, I think it's a fine spot to pull the trigger. I bluffed, bet the 400K. He didn't even think about it, and he folded. That's a little bit of my reputation precedes me. He knows I don't ever bluff in that spot, so I was able to do that. Another bluff while we're at it, really close it out, was against Kerry Katz at the final table of 100K. I don't know if you saw this one. Kerry, again, knows me to be a guy that I don't really bluff much. I raise under the gun with King-Queen. He defends the big blind. Comes Ace-10-4, I want to say, with 2 clubs. I don't have anything with King-Queen. He checks. I bet small on the flop. I see bet quarter pot. He calls. The turn is a 9, so it's Ace-10-9-4. He checks, and I looked, and he had about 900K or like 800K, maybe 7, 8. So now I bet big. I bet 360K, which was an overbet of the pot, as a complete bluff, of course. You could look at my hand and I have king, queen, so I block ace, queen, but he doesn't have a lot of ace, king. He has some. And, I guess he could have ace, queen, and I block a little bit of that. So I feel like in this situation against me with ICM pressure of a final table and, moving up, and it's me, he's going to have to make his decision on the turn for my pot size bet, whether or not he's going to play the hand out on the turn and get it in, or just fold now. So he thought about it for a minute. He folded. He had ace-jack. So he actually folded ace-jack. So if I know that he's going to be folding ace-jack, then my bluffs are printing when I bet, 360 on that turn. Like I'm just printing. If I can get him off a hand that strong, then, my bluff is just clearly really, really good in that spot. Again, everyone's going to adjust. So people adjust to what you're doing. They've seen some of the bluffs I made. So that both is a sort of can both benefit you and hurt you in the sense that, like, if you're not readjusting or making other adjustments to whether or not they think you're balanced in these spots, you could be exploited. So, for example, if everyone just assumed that, when he overbets, he's bluffing, well, that'd be pretty easy to play against, right? Just call every overbet. So I have to be wary of that, especially since a couple of them have been shown on TV, and make sure that whenever I'm telling a story, I have enough combinations of hands that could be value, that are sort of in line with the numbers that could be bluffs, and just really ultimately trying to put my opponents in situations where I keep them guessing. And I've done a lot better job of that since December than I have in the past because, again, I've had almost 20 years of hands on TV that everyone knows exactly how I play. And, I've always played a completely exploitative style where I'm looking to exploit everyone else. And by default, that makes me exploitable. And all the best players in the world have figured out how to do that in the past. So now I'm adding more layers, more weapons to my game, and I want to add a lot more because I say that of all the study I did in that 3 months, I feel like I got 25% of it, 30, and I got so much more to go. I didn't study ICM, I didn't study short stack play, I didn't study 40 big blinds. All I've been working on is 100 big blinds. So I plan on delving in a little deeper with that and some other secret study that will not be shared. So guys, that was fun. I'm thinking about having Popcorn join me on these podcasts. What do you think about that? Eric Wasserson. So we can have a little bit of back and forth. That way when, you know, I'm drinking water, he can be talking or something like that because my mouth is dry right now. But let me know if you think I should have Was come like sort of co-host this with me and we can go over poker issues and whatever else is on my mind. We had a lot on this one. A lot of different things going on. A lot of little beefs on Twitter. But yeah, all right, guys, you have a good one. Hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you're listening, you know, go ahead and do the fucking, what is it, the, you know, hey, leave, subscribe, and blah, leave a thing. I don't really give a shit. YouTube, hey, make sure you follow and blah, blah. I really don't give a shit. I don't fucking care. Sorry. I said fuck in the end of this thing, huh? I don't, you know what, fuck it. I'm allowed. So what? You know, in that video when I was driving the scooter, I was saying fuck all the time. That's a good word. All right, guys. See ya.